Hello, I'm William Henderson, and I'm going to be looking at carbon dioxide capture and storage. And this is a policy by the World Resources Institute. So the agenda for this presentation will be first to take a look at the institution, the World Resources Institute. Then we'll take a look at the policy and the basic science behind carbon capture and storage. Then we'll take a look at how WRI has framed the climate and energy issue. And then who will this affect, and how will it be regulated, carbon capture? Take a look at the determinations of success, and we'll see where carbon capture stands now compared to where it needs to be. Finally, just take a brief look at how to improve the policy that WRI has created. So the institution that has worked to promote this policy of carbon capture and storage is the World Resources Institute, established in 1982 by James Spieth. Its goal is to move human society to live in ways that protect Earth's environment and its capacity to provide for the needs and aspirations of current and future generations. They have more than 450 experts and staff who have worked closely with leaders around the world to turn ideas into actions to sustain natural resources. Their key focuses on energy and environment and development are climate, energy, food, forests, water, and cities and transportation. Just an example of a couple of the projects that they've worked on is the Congo Basin Forest Atlases. This assists decision makers in that region to achieve sustainable management of the forest resources. And Charge. This was an initiative to bring energy to the more than 1.3 billion people around the world who don't have access to reliable energy. The policy WRI promotes is carbon dioxide capture and storage, or CCS for short. The process involves three steps. First is the capture of carbon dioxide, which is either done pre-combustion, post-combustion, and that involves separating the CO2 from other flue gases in the combustion process, or oxy-fuel combustion, where fossil fuels are burned in an oxygen-rich environment, and the gas that leaves this environment is pure CO2, making it easier to capture. Transport of CO2, which would need to be done through pipelines, and this is an infrastructure that's not currently set up in the United States. Finally, storing the CO2. This would involve pumping it underground into geological formations that could hold it. In 2008, the World Resources Institute wrote guidelines for carbon dioxide capture, transport, and storage, where all of this is spelled out. So the WRI sees the year 2050 as a critical date, that if we can avoid a 1.5 degree Celsius rise in atmospheric temperature by this date, we'll avoid catastrophic environmental and human damage. They believe greenhouse gases are responsible for the rise in temperature, and that burning fossil fuels by power plants, namely the 5,000 large power plants around the world, is one of the key factors in this rise in greenhouse gases. 10 billion metric tons of CO2 are put up every year by these 5,000 large power plants. The solution. They don't see CCS as the solution, but merely a bridge to get us to a zero emissions world with renewable energy. So who is this new policy seeking to manage? Well, the major burden will be put on fossil fuel burning power plants. They'll have the cost of instituting these new capture technologies, post-combustion, pre-combustion, and oxy-fuel combustion, as well as an increased capacity cost. These new technologies take up energy themselves, which means that current power plants will have to produce more energy to compensate for the loss in capture. But they'll also open up new markets. Transportation of CO2, including building new pipelines, and the geological surveys field. Now, how will this new technology be managed? Well, with some new policies, lawmakers will have to create policies that have to be developed to adequately fund post-closure activities that become the responsibility of the entity assuming responsibility for long-term stewardship. Also can rely on some old policies, such as the US EPA's policy for constructing a new facility or retrofitting an existing facility that says that operators must comply with requirements under the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act. So they do have some laws to already fall back on. So how is success going to be measured? Well, the International Energy Agency said that there needs to be a 50% reduction in global CO2 by the year 2050. And this would require 3,000 large-scale projects of carbon capture and storage. So how is it going? Well, in 2012, the Global CCS Institute issued a report saying that there were 75 large-scale projects underway as of September 2012. For the first 4 years, 75 projects is pretty good to get on their way to 3,000. So what is their recommendations for increasing the likelihood of success? Well, they think they should start with the easier projects to gather more support. Low-risk sites should be prioritized for early projects. So how can this policy be improved? Well, the WRI reports are long, a little bit complicated, but very well written. But the summary for policymakers and regulators is in the appendices following a 125-page report. So I would look to the IPCC summary for policymakers as a good structure to follow to get people to listen and read short bulleted points to enact your policy. There also needs to be stated the goals, and then what's at stake. What dangers could apply if this process isn't enacted? Thank you for your attention.